Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for having us here today. My name is Stephanie Helms, and I am the Executive Coordinator for the Washington Invasive Species Council, here with M. Roberts, the Urban Forestry Technician for Western Washington for the Department of Natural Resources Urban and Community Forestry Program. And again, really grateful to be here at the EAB in the West webinar, and really humbling to be alongside all these great speakers with these great programs in Oregon and Canada, and just learning a lot ourselves today. So thank you again. And we're here to share a little bit about what resources our agencies and state partners have to help prepare Washington for emerald ash borer, and also some resources and different events that are on the horizon to keep your eyes out for. So with that, we'll roll right into it. And I'm going to turn off my camera here just to preserve some bandwidth, because we will be showing a video later. So just want to make sure that my computer doesn't keel over. So with that, before we begin, I just want to give a little bit of information about the Washington Invasive Species Council. We were established by the state legislature in 2006 and extended again until 2032. And we're tasked with the policy level direction, planning, and coordination for all agencies involved in the management of invasive species here in Washington. So stopping the spread of invasive species that are here and preventing the introduction of new invasive species that could be harmful. So think of us a little bit of the compass that is providing that unified approach and direction for everybody who's involved in the management and prevention of invasive species. And we're pretty unique because we look statewide across agency missions. We're focused on the prevention and the management of invasive species. And again, we look across those agency missions to find opportunities to collaborate and also to identify gaps that couldn't individually be filled by any one state agency. And of course, all this is while we act as a forum for education and communication for invasive species here in Washington State. And any additional information on our statewide strategy can be found in our 2020 to 2025 strategic plan. So that's on our website, which I'll give more information for later. And here you can see a cross-section of appointed members ranging from state, federal, and local agencies and tribal governments that all collaborate to develop policies and programming to address invasive species across all ownership. So again, anyone who's involved with EAB response, that would include Washington Department of Agriculture, Washington State University, Department of Natural Resources, all of them are extremely important players in the Washington Invasive Species Council world. But it's not just government that makes the council so successful at addressing invasive species. It requires an entire community approach that includes industry, researchers, volunteers, and the public. And of course, a big shout out to the Recreation and Conservation Office for being the administrative host of the council staff. Because invasive species don't respect jurisdictional boundaries, and you're going to hear me say that a lot in this presentation, we really all must work together to address possible threats to all that we hold dear here in Washington State. And in this case, what's at stake is the health of our urban forests in Western Washington and also our riparian areas in Southwest Washington. And I won't go into EAB facts too much because I know we have a lot of base knowledge of EAB, and any base facts about EAB have been way better covered in the previous presentations. But the important takeaway is that our Oregon ash in Southwest Washington is at risk. And of course, any community that's planted ash trees, such as major cities from Seattle all the way to smaller communities, they'll see those impacts of emerald ash borer if it is in fact detected here in Washington. And we have many challenges outside of the direct impact of the insect itself. Many of you know that emerald ash borer, the federal quarantine ended in 2021 due to its spread throughout 36 states in the US. And as you all know and have just heard, Oregon was the first state in the West Coast to detect emerald ash borer back in 2022. And now it is confirmed in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is why we're all here today. But this puts Southwest Washington and all of Washington on high alert, as now we have it on both sides of the state, especially along the I-5 corridor, which, as you all know, a very big volume of movement of goods and people back and forth. So pretty large pathway that can carry things across the state. And of course, Oregon ash is an extremely valuable riparian species that, if lost, will result in stream bank erosion, raising stream temperatures, and other issues that could further impact salmon populations and our native populations in our forests here. So, and of course, as I said, cities will feel that impact in urban areas as well. Which is why we're here today to share some of the above resources on the screen, some of which were created before the detection in Oregon. So I'll be speaking a little bit about the Urban Forest Pest Readiness Playbook before handing it over to my colleague M. Roberts to speak to the resources that the Department of Natural Resources and Washington State University have created that came out in recent years. And of course, again, some exciting resources and events and trainings on the horizon to keep an eye out for. So really quickly, I want to give a lightning overview. And of course, again, we'll provide our contact information at the end of this presentation because a lot to go into, but our virtual door is always open to be able to meet with anybody to explain these resources. But first, we'll go into the Urban Forest Pest Readiness Playbook, which was a council project completed in 2019 with Farm Bill funding from USDA APHIS PPQ. For those who don't know, that stands for U.S. Department of Agriculture Animal Plant Health Inspection Services, Plant Protection and Quarantine, and it was completed under an interagency agreement with Department of Natural Resources, Urban and Community Forestry Program, and the Washington Invasive Species Council. And this is such an important tool because we know that urban forests lie at the interface of trade, the movement of people, and the neighboring forests and agricultural resources. So if and when a new invasive pest does arrive in Washington, such as emerald ash borer, there's a really high probability that that pest will land in an urban area due to the high amount of movement of people and goods on a daily basis. And we're even seeing that in Oregon and in Vancouver, and had seen that detection in a major metropolitan area. And so without organizational structures in place, the worst of these pests can have costly, irreversible, lasting impacts to the urban forests that they infest. And without intervention, a pest can quickly spread to forests outside of those urban areas throughout Western Washington and, of course, to neighboring states. So in this case, the arrival of EAB in a metropolitan area can mean that spread to Southwest Washington and other areas that we really want to avoid. So who is this playbook for and who can implement it? Well, any organization, towns, cities, counties, tribes, universities, and urban forestry programs can use this tool. Because again, as I said earlier, invasive species don't respect jurisdictional boundaries. So really want to remind everyone that there's a role for everyone from those land managers down to volunteers. And this playbook is a tool for everyone, no matter what role they're in. So users of this playbook should consider involving a broad range of stakeholders and partners who will ultimately determine the success of planning efforts, the pest detection aspect, response, and future management and restoration of the area. And this is all to close that readiness gap by identifying areas that require improvement and take action. So again, closing that readiness gap between local responders and state and federal responders. And successful use of this playbook will really depend on that flexible approach because every community is different, where actions and tasks are implemented strategically and opportunistically. And users can prioritize actions based on those gaps identified. But how do you know what gaps you have? That's why the self-assessment in the beginning of the playbook is such a useful tool. So this self-assessment helps communities determine how quote unquote pest ready they are and where gaps are that can be filled. The self-assessment has benchmarks for communities to aim for, with the goal of being that communities complete this self-assessment regularly to see how they are progressing and use that data to show decision makers for additional support. So you have these 4 areas of the self-assessment. Some of the metrics include understanding risk. Like, for example, do you know how many ash trees you have in your community? So do you know what's even at risk here? Do you have capacity to support a response? So would you have to contract, say, with the tree company? Do you have a tree crew that's already within your urban forestry program? What's your staff capacity look like to be able to respond to something quickly? Number 3, ability to expedite informed decision making. So do you know who to call? Do you know who to engage within your urban forestry program? Do you know what groups that you need to inform before you take action? And of course, that also ties into community support to expand your impact. So are you working with volunteers? Are you working with master gardeners so you can either detect something quickly or be able to get the word out before you actually start acting on an invasive pest such as emerald ash borer? And it's cut off a little bit on the left-hand side here, but that is the kind of benchmark here. So again, when you take this self-assessment, you really want to hit that score. So for example, there's that 12 in that corner there, but it ranges all the way up to a maximum of 21 points. So again, if you score low, you can then identify how to improve your score later, and you can do that through looking at the key actions that are associated with every single area of the self-assessment. So after you finish that self-assessment, you can go to the corresponding action, and those actions provide additional context, tasks, guidelines on how often to revisit that action to stay prepared. So here's a screenshot of actions 1 through 10 and their affiliated number in the playbook. So again, if you maybe don't know what kind of trees you have or what your urban forestry composition is, it has an associated action item to help you maybe say do a tree inventory and canopy map, or maybe it helps you identify priority pest species for your particular community. So if you're a community that has a lot of ash trees, obviously emerald ash borer will be a priority pest for you. And of course, we have actions 11 through 20 here. And I know that's a lot of stuff to look at right now. So just want to remind everyone again that another resource we offer is our timing guidance. So again, you are not alone. If you have any questions on these action items, maybe you're looking at some of these, you're like, hey, you know, we scored kind of low in this one category. We're looking at improving it so we can see that score increase for next year, but we're not sure how, we're not sure how to interpret this. Feel free to reach out to the Washington Invasive Species Council staff, and DNR's Urban and Community Forestry Program staff are happy to connect with you and just walk you through this and find the best fit for your community. And of course, I'd like to quickly thank all the partners involved in the development of this project. And so that's USDA, U.S. Forest Service, Washington State University, Seattle Department of Transportation, and the Washington Invasive Species Council. The playbook was a really wonderful project that has been getting a lot of attention, a lot of use, and has since grown into a program with subsequent phases of funding and other opportunities, which we'll go into a little bit more. But for right now, I'd like to hand it over to M. Roberts, again, Urban Forestry Technician for Western Washington, to share a little bit more about the resources created by her program and also Washington State University. So take it away, Em, and I'll keep driving the slides.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning, everyone. The Department of Natural Resources Urban and Community Forestry Program, or UCF for short, built this Recommendations for Emerald Ash Borer Response in Washington Communities guiding document because we did not at that time have any Washington state specific resources that were designed around this unique forest pest to provide guidance on how to respond. Catering to our program's primary audience, this guide speaks mostly to publicly funded agencies and nonprofits managing urban forests, but it can be adapted to any community. The purpose of this document is for communities to have a bite-sized, quick reference guiding document that can help folks prepare for this impending EAB infestation in a way that fits each community's goals and challenges. This recommendations guide pulls from a vast array of response plans, research, and field experience from across the country, as well as from the Pest Readiness Playbook. If your community isn't already creating an emerald ash borer response plan and you aren't sure where to start, this guide highlights some of the key components you will need to consider. I've had the privilege of collaborating with Washington State University Extension staff, including some of the folks on this call today, to co-author these two publications. WSU and DNR UCF combined ideas to bring you 3 different publications in varying length and complexity. First, you have the small guiding document you just saw on the last slide from DNR Urban and Community Forestry. Then you have the medium-sized document from WSU Extension entitled Managing Emerald Ash Borer in Washington State, which is the document on the left, which provides a more in-depth look into identification, detection, and management strategies. This document speaks to anyone with an interest in tree health, from forest managers and urban forestry professionals to private property owners. Additionally, we have the longer and more thorough publication from WSU Extension entitled Emerald Ash Borer and Its Implications for Washington State, which is the document on the right. This provides a deeper dive into everything you'd want to know about this forest pest and what its arrival in our state will mean for urban and native forests. This publication speaks to professionals who work in and around trees and forests. The Urban Forest Pest Readiness Project is a three-phased collaboration between the Washington Invasive Species Council and the Department of Natural Resources Urban and Community Forestry Program to provide urban forest pest education and tools to folks that work in urban forestry or adjacent fields across Washington state. We recently completed phase 2 of this project, which contained, among other tools, a few regional pest readiness workshops and an urban forest pest virtual summit. Phase 3 will provide 3 more regional workshops to be held this year and next, and an in-person urban forest pest summit, which will take place in 2025, as well as other tools coming your way. You can find more information about past and upcoming events on the Washington Invasive Species Council or DNR Urban and Community Forestry websites. The DNR's Urban and Community Forestry Program also offers educational and technical assistance on any urban forestry or arboriculture topic in addition to pest readiness, as well as financial assistance, which we're all going to need, hopefully before and once this pest arrives in our state or is detected in our state. We also wanted to mention tree inventory data aggregation as it relates to the Pest Readiness Project. If you have an urban tree inventory, you can contact Daria Goshila or Drew Lyons from DNR UCF, and they can make you a pest susceptibility tool that you can use interactively that is specific to your community. Here's an example of what the pest susceptibility tool looks like in action. It is a dashboard that shows and tells communities the number of trees and their species that are susceptible to any of these pests listed here. This is an example from Longview, Washington, looking at their susceptibility to emerald ash borer. This makes the information easy to digest and quickly references pest susceptibility. Through the collection of traditional urban tree inventories, we have already aggregated a database of over 500,000 urban trees from 57 locations throughout Washington, and we want to continue to add to that number. So if you have an inventory that our program isn't aware of yet, please get in touch. We can't manage what we don't know we have. State and community response preparedness are reciprocal and integrated into one another. So let's stay connected. I will now pass it back over to Stephanie for the remainder of the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Em. And without our teammates like Em, none of these collaborations would be possible. So again, really big shout out to DNR's Urban and Community Forestry Program and all the wonderful work that they do. And so today we're nearing the end of our presentation about our resources, but really want to share a tool that's available for anyone, whether you're working for a municipality, any community of any size, or whether you're a member of the public and you're a tree lover or really interested in keeping your eyes peeled for invasive species. So really want to touch upon our Washington Invasives app, because again, at the end of the day, we're all still a small team and cannot be everywhere at once. Wish we could teleport, but we cannot. And again, as I said before, invasive species do not respect jurisdictional boundaries, so it's really important to have all of our eyes and ears to the ground. So this app, which is free and available for all Android and iOS devices, allows any resident to report a suspicious sighting. So whether you're out recreating, whether you're just out doing errands, whether you're out doing your day-to-day job, have this on your phone and be ready to use it. Even if you are sure, that it's an invasive species, maybe you're not so sure and it kind of looks similar to one that you've been keeping your eyes peeled for, or maybe you've just never seen that particular insect or other invasive species here in Washington. Please feel free to reach out. If you see something, say something. We would much rather have a report that ends up just being a native species than to miss an invasive species. So again, your report could potentially save the state hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars in invasive species response activities. So again, have this on your phone, and we'll also have some resources here at the end. The app is great because it also doubles as a field guide. So you're able to see photos and information about the particular invasive species that you're looking for. You can add locations like dropping a pin, you can add photos, and even comments in a description. And again, this is not just insects, this is all invasive species, since the Washington Invasive Species Council looks over everything from insects to plants, animals, diseases, etc. but insects obviously are a big part of it and why we're here today. And again, our tree service community and municipal employees and our volunteers are the eyes and ears doing great work every day and are most likely to notice something off. And as we've heard from our previous two presentations, it was members of the public who actually were able to detect and spot emerald ash borer and report it to the right place. So again, please have this on your phone. The role of the public cannot be understated. So again, great, easy to use tool. So you'll browse for ID information, select species to report, set a location of sighting, add photo, write description or comments, and then you'll go to your report queue and then you'll click submit report. And I actually do have a 5-minute video that goes over how to use this app. Joey, how are we doing on time? Because we can also send this out as a resource afterwards if we want to allow more time for discussion.
I think if you're willing to forego it right now, that would be great. We'd be grateful for more time for discussion, but it's up to you.
You got it. We can always go through this and we can send this out to an email to attendees later. So just want to go over really quickly, though, what happens when you submit that report. So, and again, it's free for iOS and Android devices. We also have a website form. So if you go to invasivespecies.wa.gov, you will see at the top toolbar, report a sighting. So you can also do it that way as well. And that immediate notification gets sent over to the Washington Invasive Species Council staff. And so that gets sent over to us and a list of verifiers for that particular invasive species. So those verifiers would be the lead agency for that particular invasive insect or others who are considered experts. And then once we consider, oh man, that might be something, we send that right over to the lead agency for immediate notification. So it can be lightning fast. And this was showcased in 2020. Some dead ash trees with some suspicious dieback patterns were discovered by City of Seattle staff along a busy arterial where goods and services were transported across the state. So in this case is Fran's Bakery there. City of Seattle staff immediately reported it through the Washington Invasives app and heard back from WISC staff within the hour. And a site visit with the proper state and federal agencies was scheduled for the very next day. So really, really fast turnaround there. And luckily, it was not EAB, so that was a huge relief. But the point is, it shows the power in that report and how quickly it can get routed to the right people. And not so subtle brag, that is me for when I worked for the City of Seattle at the time. So really coming full circle here, talking about EAB from a different position. So in closing, again, we're only a call or a report away. So please do not hesitate to reach out. If there's any coaching either of our programs can provide. And of course, please stay tuned for more updates through the website and the newsletter on the screen. We have convened our Washington Emerald Ash Borer Interagency Working Group and are currently having meetings. So over the past few years, Washington has really invested in preparation for our communities and prevention. So preventing the insect from getting here in the first place. But now we're sitting back down. We're looking for those opportunities for collaboration. We're looking for possible funding initiatives to see what further actions we can take to respond to emerald ash borers. So these conversations are ongoing. So please stay tuned and especially stay tuned for those events that Em shared regarding urban forest pest readiness trainings and workshops. We will be having 3 workshops across the state, one of which we're looking to have up north along that I-5 corridor to start getting Washington communities that are closer to Vancouver prepared. So please feel free to go to our website. Again, that's invasivespecies.wa.gov. You can find more information and you can find the playbook itself there and any upcoming events. And also sign up for the DNR TreeLink newsletter as well, and that will give you everything that you need to know about the state of urban and community forestry here in Washington state. So you're well covered, and again, we can send out these resources to attendees after the presentation. So with that, thank you so much for having us here today. Again, super humbling to be alongside Oregon and Canada and talking about emerald ash borer. Hope you learned some stuff about what we're doing to prepare Washington communities today and what resources are available. And if you have any questions, please feel to reach out to us. Our contact information is on the screen. And I'll be handing it back over to Joey to start the discussion. Thank you all so much again.